Hello, my fellow HR enthusiasts. My name is Daniel Gonzalez. I am a current student at UNT going after my MBA in HR management. I am also a fairly new member of Fort Worth HR, and today I am leading our session for a journey with HR professionals. And we are talking with Dr. Mariya Gavrilova Aguilar today. She is a professor at UNT, teaching a lot of HR classes. Maria, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself so we can get to know you before we start jumping into these questions?
Sure. Thank you so much, Daniel. So I did start my HR career a few years ago. It's been a wonderful journey, and I'm very passionate about HR. And my first official role, what I call, was as an HR generalist. And I absolutely loved it and learned a lot. But I knew that I always wanted to pursue advanced degree, and so I was working while completing my PhD at actually UNT as well.
Hmm.
And so this is my third year teaching at UNT in the Department of Management. And so I teach, like Daniel said, a lot of HR related courses in our major. And I'm excited just to share a few things that will hopefully be helpful to a lot of you as you navigate your own careers and your own journeys.
It's your third year teaching. Wow, I would have thought you've been doing this forever whenever I took your class.
Well, thank you. I have been teaching online for a while, but
Uh,
officially, it's my third year at UNT. What I call, one job. Talk about the gig economy, Daniel. I think
oh.
UNT will tell you that we know what that looks like because a lot of us, work a full-time job, perhaps complete some sort of an advanced degree, just like you're doing now. You're working both on your MBA and you're working in a full-time position. And then for a lot of us in academia, also that usually involves doing some sort of adjunct work.
Doesn't it?
And so there's the gig economy in a nutshell right there.
Right. Okay, that introduction actually gives us a good segue into our first question, Maria's. How and where did you get your start in HR? I know you said you started as an HR generalist, but how did that start?
Yes, I actually love that question because it took me a few years to reflect exactly what led me to that career path. And so I'll kind of reshare some of that here. So for me, what really started this was I had an advisor in my undergraduate degree that was very passionate about HR and had worked in HR in various organizations. And so one day he called and said, look, there's an HR internship available at a Fortune 500 manufacturing company, and I know you're a marketing major, but you're maybe thinking about HR and you're not sure. What do you think about it? Do you want to go interview? And so I did, and I absolutely loved it. And that position was more along the lines of updating job descriptions, job postings, and trying to implement the applicant tracking system. They were going to have kind of a brand new applicant tracking system, and they hadn't had anything like that before. So it was a great learning experience that further solidified my decision to actually, abandon marketing and go on the HR track. The other thing that I did at the time this was allowed was I took the PHR certification, professional human resources, but I needed to have the years of experience. But I knew as I was wrapping up my undergraduate degree that I needed to sit for that exam and take it. And so this was helpful to me because it stated what we like to say sometimes to others is getting a certification is important because it kind of gives a message to the field that you're committed to it, that's what you want to do for the next, however many years. And so, although I was not able to use that credential and that, after my name, it was still something that I needed to still get the experience, and I was looking forward to actually being employed in a full-time position.
Right.
But then what happened, 2008 economic crisis and downturn. And so at that time, I was kind of working on projects whenever they would come about. I had just moved to North Texas, and so I spent a lot of time going to different organizations and meeting new people and trying to establish just networking, establish connections. And so I was fortunate enough to work again on updating job descriptions, updating personnel manuals, and that kind of helped me in that aspect as well. And then how I got my actually HR generalist position was through a connection. So I cannot recommend enough starting those relationships, building those relationships, providing something of value to other people so that in turn, one day when that opportunity comes about and they get a call from somebody that says, look, I'm trying to fill this position and can you recommend somebody? And in that case, you know, that person will think of you because they know that you have been there for them. You can do that and you can, you know, provide those services and have that expertise, and they can actually vouch for you. And I think that's extremely, extremely important to be able to do. So yes, to answer that question again, kind of to recap, it's a series of steps that
Okay.
there.
Okay. I think it's funny how often I run into HR people whose undergraduate degree was not in HR or business, like you're just marketing. Mine was English. It's quite a variety when I talk to people.
Yes, yes, we see that a lot. I think part of it was because for a while we didn't really have HR as a major. So it's been 20 years that we've had. But you know, it's important that you explore all these different career options, and especially while you're in undergrad, because a lot of times the way the higher education system is set up is you can go into many different fields just because you have a very solid foundation and you know you have the research skills and the decision-making skills that you've kind of polished, and the public speaking and the writing. And so that allows you that opportunity to go into another field. Because a lot of times we don't really know what it is that we want to do. And if you have the opportunity to do an internship, you know, that can validate either one, yes, that's where I want to go, or two, oh my goodness, absolutely no. And I'm going to learn as fast as I can. So that's where, you know, we always emphasize internships and even job shadowing and any kind of those opportunities can give you that feel for what that field is expecting of you as you first enter the professional workspace.
Which, you know, talking about the field, the HR field, and other fields kind of gives us a good segue into our next question, which is what do you find most challenging about our field, the HR field?
Yes, there are two things that I would like to highlight, especially I think from the perspective of young professionals. It is important to realize that you are balancing out the needs of the firm, of the organization, with being an advocate for the employee. And so it can be challenging. There's specific policies, specific things that are done that you may feel like you're shortening the employee, you're not doing it the right way. Especially right now, we're in the midst of COVID-19, and there's a lot of separation packages going around, voluntary separation packages, as well as early retirements. You know, a lot of employees have been furloughed. So it is definitely challenging for HR to kind of carry on that burden, try to advocate for employees at the same time, really attempting to do what's also best for the organization and be an advisor. So definitely that's kind of a big realization. And the second one is to just always think about the type of value that you provide as a department and as an individual. So I'll give you a example, Daniel. Sometimes HR wants to kind of cover their bases, right? Because they've been on both sides
right.
of the spectrum. And so we come up with things like, oh, let's just have this new form that so-and-so department needs to complete, or all of these employees need to complete. So you really have to think, what's the value in it? And if you, as an HR professional, can pull that report from somewhere and you can, you know, get these answers to these questions, it's really necessary for employees to fill out another form. So part of the challenge of what we've been trying to also advocate with HR professionals is to start moving from compliance oriented to being a lot more strategic minded and trying to do a lot more with the tools that we have, everything at our disposal to educate the rest of the executive board and everybody into making these decisions that will be important to make within that organization. So, it's a fine line, and definitely I've seen that it's done differently in different organizations, and that's where what your values are really comes in and helps you make certain decisions, because it can be very, very challenging to work with a group of leaders that don't necessarily have the same values as you do.
But I do find it interesting that you were talking about finding that balance between advocating for our employees and trying to do what's best for the business. That's definitely a lesson that I've been learning during this COVID time. Because my company is one that wasn't immune to the changes that we had to go through these past few months. It was definitely difficult, my first exposure to it, but it's definitely a challenge, and it's something that comes with our field, and it's a big part of it sometimes.
Yes, definitely.
So, going on to our next question. So, what do you do to stay on top of trends and changes in HR? What kind of sources do you use, or things like that?
Yes, absolutely. It's extremely important to keep up with as much of it as it relates to your job, and sometimes everything. So what I have found actually extremely important is membership in these local associations, just like you're a member of Fort Worth HR. I'm a member of Dallas HR, and I've attended Fort Worth HR meetings and Mid-Cities meetings, North Texas SHRM meetings, and everything we have locally. In addition to National SHRM, Society for Human Resource Management also offers a membership that obviously allows you to kind of keep up with some trends, daily digest, or however often you want those updates. The other thing that I've done is being involved in the HR Southwest Conference. So I've been involved for, ever since I've been in North Texas. So now, since 2008, 2009. Those types of events are extremely, extremely helpful as well. Not only because there's networking and educational opportunities, but because you kind of get a feel for where you may be needing a little bit more help. If, for example, you just started working on benefits and you've never worked with benefits, you need a little bit more assistance. The other thing that I've done, again, this is all throughout all the conferences and all the events that I've attended, is to subscribe to certain kind of free webinars provided by some employment lawyers, so law firms, as well as benefit consulting firms. So it's a little bit of everything as far as the practitioner side. It's also important to look into Harvard Business Review, because they provide the research side, but more in a practitioner's terms, so that we can see where it actually applies to the workplace, and that's extremely helpful. And of course, I also read different journal articles on whatever constructs I'm interested in at the time. Obviously turnover is huge right now, job satisfaction, just to kind of get that evidence-based perspective in what people are researching.
That's a lot of good advice. I know you mentioned the HR Southwest Conference. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Something
yes.
I definitely want to get interested in. You said one of the benefits of it is networking. I don't know what they're planning to do, if they're going to go virtual this year or if they're going to still have it in person. How do you see that networking affect if it's virtual? How do you see that working out?
So they will have the HR Southwest Conference virtual this year, October 4th through 7th, and they have up to 31 recertification credit hours already approved by both certification bodies, and there will be opportunities, definitely. We are still heavily invested in that. Used to be 2,000 plus people on site at the Fort Worth Convention Center, and so there'll be more announcements made specifically about that, but greatly encourage anybody that is available to attend to sign up for that this year, and of course future years as well.
It's definitely something I'm interested in.
Wonderful.
And I believe that takes us into our final question of the day, which is, what advice would you give to someone wanting to break into the art profession? Like I know for me, It taken so long for me to get into the HR profession. I jumped from like sales to marketing and back to sales, and finally I got my break into HR. What advice would you offer to someone that's in a similar position?
Thank you for that question, and thank you for your own kind of a reflection on it. And that is extremely important. Is you've learned a lot while you were in sales and while you were in marketing, and all of this is valuable in finding out what that business really is about and what actually happens in these other departments. It's very important for people to understand that HR does not work in a silo. And so you have to collaborate with all other departments. You have to build those relationships and strong ones and long-term ones and meaningful ones to be able to accomplish the goals, not just of your department. Obviously things like fewer accidents at work and quality production and return on investment in training and such as that, but also how does this impact the organization overall? So my advice would be to just think outside the box as much as possible and explore different fields. I started in municipal government. I didn't know anything about municipal government. My previous positions for 3 months was working at a casino in human resources. I did not know anything about casino operations, but that's what comes in being in HR. You get to not just look at job descriptions and job postings, but you get to observe how people work in their area and what they're struggling with and how you can assist them in actually being more effective at their job, and everything else that you'll be tasked with as an HR professional. And so just keep exploring. If you're already working, nothing prevents you from contacting your HR director or HR manager and saying, is it okay for me to come and, shadow you? Of course, now with COVID, we have to observe all these safety guidelines, but even virtually, is it okay for me to have a, 30-minute conversation with you just to find out more? Because where we struggle as HR is sometimes we bring in all the HR knowledge and knowledge of the laws and the great things that leading companies are doing, and we're trying to kind of put it in place. But what we're struggling with is really understanding our own business and understanding how the company, why do they exist? What's the purpose behind it? And then trying to figure out more about that field. Who are our competitors? Who's taking our talent away? Who is offering more money than we are? Who's offering better benefits? What are we? And all of that needs to really be looked at more holistically. And so again, we don't work in silos. We need to think outside the box. One other thing I would say is recruiting used to be more of an entry-level position, and I don't believe that's the case anymore. I got a position as an HR generalist. I had a little bit of experience, but probably not enough at the time to go straight into a generalist role, but it worked for me. And so look at where there may be opportunities to begin and do job shadowing, do internships, take whatever positions may be available, or even project-based type work. And of course, because I work in higher education, how you should not shy away from courses that may have somewhat of a reputation of being difficult. If course is in your major and your major is HR or something else, and that course is a little bit difficult, definitely take that course, because what we would love for you to have on a resume is specific projects that you've done that are more consulting type, that you went out there, you were able to properly evaluate the problem, you provided the solutions, you did your research, and then you have something that's actionable. And those are the kinds of things we would love to see on your resumes. And those are the things that students and young professionals can talk about in their job interviews that will make that distinction between what they learn and what they know and how they can connect it to the business and the impact. So there's a lot of things that could be done to get your career started in HR. And like you said, just have patience and network, so that the proper people can notice you and can recommend you.
Right. I highly recommend that internal transfer kind of thing you were talking about because exactly what I did. I worked in our sales department for a year, was able to bring some experience from the business, from the floor into the HR department, and I think that was a huge help whenever I transitioned and applied for the job.
Kudos to you. And I know you're doing great currently at your organization and working on some very important projects. So that's just wonderful and a testament to how that transition can be made.
It can be. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I think that brings us to the end. I want to thank you, Mariya, for being here today, giving us your input and insight into the HR world. Is there any other little tidbits you'd like to offer before we end this thing?
Thank you again so much for inviting me, and especially now, the only other thing I would say is learn how to network virtually and how that job search process has changed, and have more patience because we are pretty much in a virtual environment. So test it, test it through your career services at the university or your organization, what have you, so that actually you have practice before you go in and do it, and just have patience.
Good advice. I definitely second that. Well, thank you for your time, Mariya.
Thank you. Bye, Daniel.
Bye.